They're probably on Facebook, they do all that kind of stuff.
If I didn't press brightness so bad, I could probably.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, it's just running on the ground.
More than we've had.
Are they coming?
That's a good question, huh?
No, we'll go ahead and get through the preliminaries, and then hopefully by then they'll be here. So, call this February 22nd High Springs City Commission meeting to order. I've got about 6:31.
All right.
Take the invocation, and then we'll follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would rise, please. Pastor Brian Williams will lead us in the invocation.
Most gracious God, as we come to you as humble as we know how, praying unto you, God, that we have peace, God. I pray for unity, God. God, I pray for those that have lost their loved ones down in Parkland, God. Just strengthen that families, Lord. Comfort them at this time, Lord. And God, even just touch the hearts of those that loved ones were harmed in this. Just touch them right now, God. We know that you're able to do so. So again, I just pray that we just can come together as a country and do what's best for everyone. Lead us and guide us, teach us, give us understanding that we can be people that love one another. And our God, I just pray, God, you bless this community, Lord, like you've been doing so. Continue to bless us. Continue to lead us and guide us also, Lord. And God, I just pray for a special prayer for first responders. Keep them safe from any hurt, harm, or danger. Give them wisdom. Give them knowledge and understanding that they do their job well, that nobody be hurt. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Jenny.
Mayor Jamison?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jones? Here. Commissioner Sanders?
Here.
Commissioner Lincoln?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here. Approval of agenda. Any additions? Everybody good with the agenda?
I'll make
Motion to pass it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the agenda for tonight's meeting for February 22nd.
Second.
I have a first and a second to approve the agenda. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, is passed. Next item is approval of the minutes. It says January 8th. We're talking February 8th. So we need a motion on that.
So moved.
I have a motion, a second.
Second.
I have a first and a second to approve the minutes of February 8th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 5-0. At this point in time, we have citizens requesting comments. Anyone has to say something, excuse me, please state your name for the record. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Consider ordinance 2018-01. I know you just sat down, Mr. Walker. Your timing is great. Proceed, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance number 2018-01, an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Alcoholic Beverages of the City of High Springs Code of Ordinances, lifting the restriction on alcohol on premises consumption at the city's civic center, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and providing for codification. So the motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-01 upon its reading by first reading by title only.
Any comments?
A couple questions. So, for its liability, so when we do a application, would it have on the application, would it be some type of on there saying will alcohol be served?
Yes.
And then if there's, what I'm trying to get to, if they do something to destroy the building or hurt one another or whatever, who would be liable?
They are.
It's a good question, and so typically whoever's renting the building has to put up liability insurance. So that's your starting point. Our liability carrier would also have coverage if there, for whatever reason, there's inadequate coverage or if there's a claim, then our carrier would be the next in line. So if there was an accident there, and this is irrespective of alcohol. Of course, this is focused on alcohol, but just in any type of negligence circumstance, the plaintiff sues everybody they possibly can, and they join everybody in, and they look at what our coverage is, they look at the other coverages, and if depending on what the damages are, they act accordingly. So that's how that works. But the first line of defense would be the renter's insurance. The second line of defense would be our coverage. The third line of defense, if they exceed all of that, which we have extensive liability coverage, but if they were able to do that, then our sovereign immunity would be the next line of defense, which is highly, highly unlikely that we would ever get to this point like that. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking to the liability factor, you're not liable for serving alcohol if somebody does something stupid while they're drinking and causes an accident. You're not automatically liable for that. But if you know that somebody has been is imbibing too much and you serve alcohol to them anyway, then that's where you would have potential liability. But what we're envisioning, it's not likely that city employees would be engaged in this. It'd be whoever's using or renting the civic center. I hope I'm answering the question.
We've had a lot of requests from people that have married, married, they want an exception there. And that's the reason we put forward. Apparently in the newspaper, Alachua, which was one step ahead of us, already passed an ordinance that allows that. I think ours is narrow in scope. We want to keep it that way. There's only one portion in there I object to a little bit, and that is the selling of alcohol.
Okay.
Would like to see the selling taken out.
Yeah, because.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's certainly something we can do. If you all would direct, if you'd like us to do that, we can strike that paragraph 1. It's actually section 10-4A1. We kind of made it expansive, and you all can contract it as much as you all like.
So I have a question with the liability, back to the liability, and this is very common at weddings because I've been to lots of weddings and all of us have. When there's alcohol, often there's not good monitoring of who's drinking that alcohol, and underage children, young people often get alcohol. So I just don't want us to open ourselves up to a liability claim for something like that, because as you said, they sue whoever they can sue. That's a normal course of events.
Let me speak to that as far as from the school, because that's what I do. And so what we would have is within your rental agreement, you put in there, and in the rental agreement, it states that you have the deal. Obviously, I would do there, you're gonna have $1 million liability. That's what I would suggest. Within the certificate of insurance that they have to provide, then there's going to be specific language that says that we hold the city of High Springs harmless. And they are also named as the additional insured. So if they sue us, it goes to them. We sign over all responsibility to the person with the rental agreement. If they serve to a minor and the minor goes out and gets an accident, that's them. They assume it and they hold us harmless type of deal. And then the other key thing is making sure that we're named as additionally insured, so we will get sued. It's like school boards. But it goes against the primary person first, as Mr. Walker said. And like I said, ours, I would suggest that if we do this, you would have $1 million liability, a $2 million aggregate within the parameters. And if you don't want to do that, then you don't. I agree on the deal. I would not be for sale at all. Well, there's a couple wording on the thing. Obviously, if you read it, except within. So the word within obviously has meaning, which means that the people have to stay within the building. And if you go down further into B, it talks about that you can't drink. What I don't want is people coming out and wandering over to the playground where you may have kids or this bit. So the language in here says it specifically is within. And then it also says, if you go down to B, it shall be unlawful to have in possession any alcohol beverage, public street, thoroughfare, sidewalk, public owned parking. And above it talks about the other areas. So I think from a liability standpoint, when you have the facilities agreement and the certificate of insurance naming the city as additionally insured, you're about as covered as you can get. Whatever they do, if they fall, it's theirs. They do something, it's theirs. It just depends on whether or not we want to allow them to have alcohol at a wedding. This depends on what we do. And this is solely for the Civic Center. It's not the school. It's no other building. This is the way this is written. This is solely for the Civic Center. Excuse me.
For my own clarification, I hear you saying you're going to need a certificate or maybe $1 million of coverage. I can see that coming from an organization or a business or a club or a group or something. But you have a lot of individuals that rent the Civic Center as well. Are you now expecting them to produce $1 million worth of insurance at the same time?
You can buy a single event.
Yes, you can.
We had one who bought a single event, and it was about $125 for a one-time event to get the coverage. So they can't, and a person can do it. It's not bankrupting them.
No.
It is.
I just want to make sure it's all inclusive.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing is, if somebody bring in and say they want to have a wedding, and they want to have alcohol, they're going to have a separate application for those people? Because right now we don't have no, am I correct, Jen? We don't have no application you got to the thing, you go check out the key and all that. They fill it out. But see, but on that, we're not asking for insurance. Am I correct?
I'm going to have to add it.
That application needs to be.
Yeah, it's going to have to be
Jay
added.
and I have been talking about the other things that can cause it. And if you're talking about alcohol.
Yeah, should have an ordinance.
Yes.
So that is something we got at the same time.
We need to look at it. That's
We're
right.
looking at it at the result.
But you don't want that in the ordinance, because then we're stuck with those fees, et cetera. You're doing the ordinance to be able to move forward.
Back for second reading, as soon as your comment was made, my thought was, and my note was, we need to look at the hold harmless clause, we need to look at that in the rental agreement, and we also need to have a checklist that says, have you provided your $1 million policy $2 million aggregate policy, and whatever other checklist that we have for security deposit or whatever it is. I think staff needs to look at all of that. We'll look at it as well. And when we bring this back, we'll have a sample of what that looks like. So when you approve it, you can see, okay, you've got all that prepared and ready to go. So when the person comes in and says, I want it for June 1st, I'm going to have a wedding, and okay, here's all the criteria that you have to have available.
Okay, so with that being said, so then what you're saying, everyone that rent the Civic Center now will have to have certificate of insurance?
That's what my
I'm
suggestion.
surprised that we don't have it.
Well, the reason that we don't have it, because now like the group, Mr. Barber, they can't afford to buy insurance every time they go into the Civic Center, because how often they going in there?
You can buy it for a year.
And that's going to be expensive.
Depending, and you're with it, but here's the other thing. We talked about this, we brought this up a year and a half ago, and I think somebody does something in there now, we buy it. We have no control over it. We're not the organizing committee. We're not the one in there. Something happens in there now, there's no facility agreement in the deal, it's ours. We ought to have a certificate of insurance from anybody who rents a building in the city of High Springs should produce, otherwise we buy it. Now, if we're willing to do that, then that's okay, but if somebody gets hurt in there, they're going to come after us, and there is no other insurance out there. We're assuming that risk, and we've been assuming that risk for years. So if we're okay with that, and I'm not saying okay, but we are renting out the building. We don't have to charge them rent, but to not have them supply some type of insurance to cover any type of negligence, somebody falling, somebody slipping on the water, somebody spills water, they slip on the water. If they sue, they're going to sue us because we're the building and there's no insurance. I get where you're coming from, and it's a tough deal. But our job is make sure the welfare of the city that we can change the numbers some. But I think any city-owned building that we have that we rent out, there ought to be a facilities lease agreement, and there ought to be insurance, because otherwise the city places itself liable for anything that happens in there, even though we have no control over it. There's no employee there watching it. There's no employee supervising it. But we will bear the brunt if there's an accident, because we're not requiring insurance.
Yeah, and I know we discussed this one time before. When you got your small groups, like for family reunions, some of your church groups, they're not going to be. Now, when we do something with the Elmer Bank, we get insurance. But you're going to have some groups, small groups, family groups, not going to be able to afford that insurance. And what we're about to do is we're about to open up a can where people are going to start renting the Civic Center because they can't afford it. And those, the rental is cheap, but then they're trying to go out to get that insurance for 1 day or 2 days. It's going to cost you at least $110, at least $110.
Probably.
At least that. I don't know. I'm kind of leery. Some people not going to rent it now because they cannot afford the insurance. And we always thought it was a civic center for the community. I don't know if by law, if you're going to rent it for special events or organizations or whatever. I don't know if you can, by law, discriminate against people. Mr. Walker.
The easiest thing is to have one size fits all. You can have provisions where you have exceptions. As soon as you do that, then everybody tries to fit within that exception. So then you get into the situation like the mayor said. If you have a mishap, the insurance is a wonderful thing to have. We're lucky in the fact that we're a city, so we have sovereign immunity, so we have a certain limit of liability. But I've seen situations where governmental entities are held. You can exceed the sovereign immunity if there's certain actions that go outside of your employment duties with the city. So there's ways to get around even sovereign immunity. Best answer is to have sufficient liability insurance when you're engaging in this sort of thing. And that goes across the board, liability insurance or not, with respect to alcohol. The alcohol issue is, I think, bringing the
Other
the
issues.
issue front and center for us. But this is a situation where if you ask me what puts the city in the best position, we should have an insurance coverage no matter who uses it. And I know that's a hard answer for some people that just want to rent it for a very family event. But that's my job is to put you in the safest position. And so that's what I would recommend.
Well, let's do this because this is a different topic. So let me ask you this, would it be okay if he were to develop the forms that he talked about? He can bring them back, we don't have to approve it, but he can show that. I think the other issue about certificate of insurance and so forth, I think that's a different topic that needs to be discussed on what we want to do. You can vary the levels of liability depending on the act. So maybe if it's something else, you can go to 100,000. You don't have to go to $1 million because of the act. I think that's something we can inquire to where it wouldn't be as oppressive on the deal. Regarding this here, would we be in agreement to have him at least bring back the forms, let us look at it and so forth? We're not agreeing on anything, but let's see what it looks like. And then, or no, I mean, I'm not trying to push anything. I'm just saying, bring it. We haven't approved anything, but we can look and see what it looks like.
I can live with that.
I think that's a good idea. I think excluding the selling, because we don't want somebody
There's
to
no
set
selling.
up over there and, create a venue where they're selling alcohol. And it's a reasonable accommodation to make for a citizen that wants to have a wedding or an anniversary party or something and have alcohol there. I think it's a reasonable accommodation as long as we're careful that we don't expose ourselves.
And are we gonna limit it to beer and wine, or are we gonna open up to the?
Right now it's alcohol, Mr. Mayor, is the way it is structured. Alcoholic beverages is the way it's stated in the ordinance. You can limit it to beer and wine.
It's exactly what I'm doing.
Keep it as alcoholic beverages. This is your determination of how you want to do it. Listening to the discussion, you can say, if alcoholic beverages are served, you must have $1 million worth of liability coverage, $2 million aggregate. So you can put the provisions in there.
Right.
If it's a church group that is meeting there to have a organizational meeting, whatever, that's a wholly different purpose.
You can do a $25,000 if you want.
You can say no to that.
You could do it as low as you wanted.
It's your call.
Right.
You still have some exposure,
Right.
but your risk is different than if I'm
Right.
having a big reception there and there's going to be alcohol served. That's a different animal, and so you can create a different requirement. So listening to the discussion in the dais, we'll put something like that together that has that differentiation. And if you all want to do it differently, then that's fine too. You at second reading, you'll have the opportunity to pass it. If everything looks good to you, you can table it and say, hey, go back to the drawing board, city manager, city attorney. I want to look at this. We want to look at this again. Or you can deny it altogether. So that's certainly something we can do. But I understand my instructions so far is to get rid of the sale of alcoholic beverages. That's step number one. Step number two is you'd like to direct staff to look at the issue of our lease and rental agreement and our liability coverage, and we would like some options when you come back to how we want to structure that.
Every Wednesday after, or in the evening, they give food away. And so which would require them to have insurance. I don't know.
And that's my question.
Yeah.
And people camp out there. I mean, they're there for hours before the food
So,
drive.
sure.
You know, they're out there for several hours.
So can you do this, Mr. Walker, when you bring back, can you try to place the liability into categories to where if it would be like, you know, a non-profit, sort of like what they're talking here, well, maybe if that's the point, you waive it or you put it at $1,000 coverage, I don't know. But if you could look at it and break it into like 4 different categories, alcohol consumption, and then incrementally, the liability would change to where it would not be oppressive on a group like you're talking about. I agree 100%. I just want to make sure the city's covered. I'm not trying, but we could reduce the amount to the bare minimum. But if you could bring back like a category deal to where we could then look at it, and then we could, you know, if we wanted to change the numbers, we could, or so forth. That'd give us at least something to get this, because I do think this is something that we need to shore up. There again, not to go in any, but the key is to make sure that the city is protected should something happen. Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
So I would need a motion, I guess, to pass this on first reading, and then once we get that, then we do roll call if that's the case with those things.
Well, I'm not going to vote for it. I want to see everything before I vote for it.
Right, me
I
too.
want to see everything, so I'm not in favor of passing it tonight. We can table
No.
it to a later date, but to pass it tonight.
Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, bring it.
Make a motion, I have no issue with that.
Yeah, so I make a motion to table this until Mr. Walker and the staff can bring back more details on how we're going to work with the liability.
I have a first and a second to table this pending the city attorney bringing back the documents and so forth to requested. Okay. All in favor?
You have
You got a question?
I apologize, Terry, excuse me.
Thank you for recognizing.
I do have a question. If I want to have a boot scooting party with a band over there and make alcoholic beverages available, is that going to be allowed in this, or are we limiting this to family-oriented weddings and anniversaries? See, all I've been hearing up until Miss Linkus said something about an anniversary was for wedding receptions. And I did hear a remark earlier that inferred that we were just trying to keep up with Alachua, the city of Alachua, in their openness. But as we're trying to keep up with openness, we're also putting ourselves in the concern of, can we still do the community-oriented things that we've been doing through our civic center? I know we cannot legislate morality, but in making a change that changes years upon years upon years of standing policy, I think that we need to consider what we're setting up, because at this point, it sounds to me like anybody can rent it and then have whatever they want in it. And if that's something we're okay with, then as a city, then we follow your leading. But another side of the question is the police department and the fire department going to have to sign off on those applications the same way they have to sign off on an application for me to have a yard sale in my church parking lot? Because there are going to be first responder issues where alcohol is concerned. There are going to be law enforcement issues where these things are concerned. And are they going to be notified and signed off so that they are prepared for that event? There's so much more to this than just whether or not one segment of our society can have their wedding reception with champagne or other alcoholic beverages in our civic center. It's a much, much broader issue. And if we're not going to set limits on the kinds of alcohol served, if we're not going to set limits on the kinds of events where alcohol may be served, You may find on Wednesday nights when they're handing out food, people passing the bottle around. I give food away once a month. I know what's possible. So my thought is we need to have more ramifications than just liability insurance. And we need to know more parameters and what are the boundaries that can be crossed or should not be crossed before we set it up. Because all in all, that's just good business and good community service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Glenn. I live at 244. On the subject of alcohol sales, what happens if the bride and groom decide to opt for a cash bar because they want to save $1,000 or whatever on their reception?
I'm lost. What's the cash bar?
What you're saying is that you're selling.
I'm from New York. We have a lot of cash bars.
They're selling it there.
They're selling it.
That's what he's
They're
asking
selling
about.
it.
Yeah.
Instead of the bride and groom, oh, I'm sorry.
They're selling it.
They're serving it, so they're charging. So
Right.
they're having an open bar.
Selling
The
it.
donation.
It's a,
You haven't been to any of those weddings. When you invite very heavy drinkers, you make it a cash bar so you don't have to, when your budget's
It keeps the
tight.
relatives under control.
Yes.
It's something to think about anyway.
Good point, though. No, good point, Jerry.
Thank you.
What happened to my application that I filed 6 months ago? Now I'm going to have to come back and refile for my, say, our Douglas event, my family event. I'm going to have to come back.
Too.
Yeah, you understand where I was coming from. So this is why I'm asking. All of a sudden, we've got to be slapped with something else different from what we filed when we've already planned it into our budget. So
I think you would. I think it would be grandfathered at this point. It would be my opinion. Take the alcohol out.
I'm not talking about no
No.
alcohol.
I'm just saying, take this out of the picture. Don't even discuss this. As big a question in my mind is, are we going to do anything when we rent our city's facilities? Because if we're not, then we assume all the liability for a group of people who we have no control over. There's no liability. I'm just posing the question, Yvonne. If we're okay with that, and we don't, I'm not advocating, I'm just saying, if something were to happen right now at one of these events, the city's going to pay. We're the ones that's going to get sued, not the organization who rented the facility. That's a completely different discussion. Where you're at, that's completely different. Right now, nothing's going to change.
Thank you.
Listen, now he don't open up another can of worms here. So, because one time we were saying weddings, but when this says you can allow alcohol consumption in the civic center.
Right.
So if somebody wanted to have I won't say no sock hop, but
Say it's not cops.
sock hop,
They could have it.
and they can have it.
This would not be inclusive. The way this is written would not be inclusive of weddings. It would be for any event you want to have in the civic center, you could have alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
As our pastor says, a boot scoot and good time.
Let's open it up to.
Right, I'm just saying, you're right, and I agree.
Mm-hmm. So if Snoop Dogg come to town and wanted to have a concert at the civic center,
I'll be going out of town.
they can have
weekend.
alcohol. Am I correct?
That's right.
Mm. It's a much bigger issue than we
No, it is.
I'm just looking at the liability part of it, and I don't know. It just and then you, I know it's just for the civic center. This got to be thought out much better, I think.
Good question.
And let me ask one more question. And so now, the liability insurance that we have now on the civic center, what do it cover? Because that came up one time before that insurance will cover anyone that rented the Civic Center. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I got that. Any other questions?
No.
So the motion is to table this, let them bring back information, and we'll go from there. I think great questions and great insight from you all out there. We greatly appreciate it. So the motion is to table this pending the information coming back. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nays, 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Item number 2, discuss and consider authorizing account credit for certain utility multi-user charges.
Our recommendation is, because we had an ordinance that included charges for multi-user at a much greater rate than the ordinance that we currently have, that we give the credits to those businesses that were charged. It's just in limbo right now, because we had an ordinance and we did another ordinance, and we have to have a policy that allows us to do that.
I know when we had the discussion on the new ordinance, and the topic of the refunding the other ones was on the table at that night, but there was never any discussion on it, and that is why I brought it back last time. So I'm in favor of us doing that. I think it puts it back to the equal playing field, and those landlords that got hit with enormous bills that had no expectation then can regroup what they lost by their subsequent bills, as a credit versus cash back.
Agreed.
The numbers that are reflected here, is this the total amount that was collected those 2 months, or is this the difference between the old and the new?
No, ma'am, that's the month. That's how much we got.
It's the total amount. Okay, if this is the total amount, then I'm in agreement with it as well. I think it would clear up the situation, and we now have the new ordinance, which is much better. So I would be in agreement with this as well.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Do I have any motion?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the city staff to credit the customers for the 2 months that they paid fees associated with multi-user resolution 2017G.
I second.
I have a first and a second. Any other comments? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Thank you. I'll take, I'll take some of the blame on this. I thought we had done this. So the oversight would be, I'll take some of the blame on this one. I thought we had approved this and it was going to be done, so I appreciate it coming back up. I thought we had agreed on it. So thank you very much. And I apologize to those who were short-sighted. Number 3, review the October, December financial statements. Jennifer?
Well, the only comment I have there is we show we've got $5 million coming in, and we've only received $1 million so far. And so in all these grants, we have to put up the money first and then get it back. So I am restricting the contractors to no more than $250,000, because we'll have 2 of those at the same time going. That is $500,000. What I'm telling my directors is, your money has been budgeted and it's going to be there, but we have to pay off the contractor first, and then you'll get whatever toys you have budgeted for towards the end of the budget, not up front. So otherwise, we have the money there. We just don't want to go and spend $5 million and be because it's been budgeted right away. So we're watching that very carefully.
I know that's making Jennifer very nervous.
Yeah. Well,
Now, make sure you explain for those who understand what the $5 million you're talking about. And what's the purpose for it?
the 5 million?
Yes.
Well, they are to take away the septic systems that are currently in the southern portion of the town. And we have a grant for $3.2 million. The other grant for $1.7 million is to put in ponds that will clean our the fluid from the septic system, from the plant we have. And we are a pilot program. DEP has determined that we can clean that water better out of nitrates. And so, and they want to show the other cities in Florida that you can do that. And so the DEP itself is putting up the 1.7 million. It'll take our spray field away and then put in 3 ponds that will cleanse the fluid from the sewer plant as it goes down. Then there will be less nitrates in the water.
Thank you, sir. I ain't want nobody to think them 5 million to go buy a new City Hall and all that good stuff.
Jennifer, we had made a comment a while ago that from the budget coming up, the $200,000, there was something where we wanted to roll the money for something for this exact deal. But that, right.
And I also want to point out too that in the budget, the general fund, state is always 2 months behind. So that's what he's saying, telling us to slow down buying, just making sure that.
So we're fronting the money, in essence, and then getting repaid back on the deal. So we're not putting out any money, spending it, we're just fronting it and then getting it paid back.
Correct.
Right, okay.
I have some specific questions on some things. It looks like in many areas, many departments, insurance costs went up, or is that the way it's paid, that it's paid on the front end, and so it looks like it went up? Is that what it looks like?
So it gets paid October, right, the first month of the year, so you're always ahead.
Okay.
And it's quarterly, so we've paid already 6 months.
Okay. Okay. And then what about dues and subscriptions? I saw that as a recurring theme through many departments, that it was a larger percentage. Is that also something that would be because of the...
Most of those are annual.
Okay.
So they're paid
Front
one
up.
time, and then it'll even itself out.
Okay. And then another thing, I'm going to pick on our attorney. City attorney, we were at 41.42% of our budgeted amount already. So is that a normal place for us to be?
That usually is about it. That's also at the first of the month. There could be, might have some
Unbudgeted expenses from the litigation pieces?
I can say that too.
Okay.
And I'll email that to you.
Okay, and then the...
That's
Okay, so most of those where I'm seeing this, weirdly high percentage, it's because there's a lump payment made towards the beginning of the fiscal year. Okay.
Or their annual dues is due in December.
Okay.
Versus May.
Okay. All right, I think that was all I had on those.
Anybody else? Thank you. Item number 4, appoint members to the CDBG Citizens Advisory Task Force.
We came up with the members last meeting. We have to officially appoint them according to the laws of CDBG. And so that's what we're doing now, is taking those names and officially, then we'll have officially putting them on the board. Then we will have a meeting probably in another month, and they'll determine the area.
Byron, do you want to speak on this, or?
A motion or?
Well, just the names, no, I'm just saying, just on the names and so forth, and then we can do the motion, and then you just want to.
Proposed members are Tammy Fleming, Robert Jones, Maybelle Jones, Terrence Watkins, and employee Billy Whitelock.
So we have to have citizen advisory on this one here for the grant to sort of get with the grant and decide where it's going to go, how it's going to go, and so forth. They want citizen input. In order to qualify for the grant, we have to have the citizen advisory group in place, and then we have to approve it. And then this is just a part of the grant to get for the water system, is to have citizen input, and that's what these people are there for. So,
And this grant's for this end of town, just like we did in the Douglas area. Same, pretty much grant.
comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve the members?
I'll make such motion.
I have a motion and a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve Tammy Fleming, Herb Jones, Maybelle Jones, Terrence Watkins, and Bill Whitlock as the advisory committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. This is a great thing, and we've said this before, water system's antiquated in many places. No shut-off valves. We've found that when we've had water breaks to where the gentleman had to go in and repair the pipes while the water was pouring in on them because we weren't able to shut it. And so in this process, also while we're removing and replacing the lines, we're also identifying shut-off valves which will allow us to better maintain the water lines should there be damage. And so it's long overdue and something I'm anxious to get going. So we appreciate the effort to get it. Number 5, consider approval of the Muni Code update. Number 5, Muni Code update.
You bet. In the budget, there was 5,000, and I guess we're asking for 8. The cost of the Muni Code itself has gone up. And I think that Jenny can speak to that.
The quote that you have given us for the ordinance is 4,116 to update the ordinance. If we include the comprehensive plan, which we don't have on my now, so if we include that, it's going to be $8,836. That is over the budgeted $5,000. That would require to include it if they want to proceed just updating the ordinances, or if they want to include the comprehensive. I spoke with Attorney Johnson, and she did recommend to include the now is outdated, people refer to it, they're seeing old.
However, the old plan is better than the new plan. And so I am having a little problem putting that plan on the Muni Code. And we're in the process of updating it, and I'll talk to that in a little bit. But that plan is really not very good. The comprehensive plan does not match the land development code at all. And I understand what they did. They didn't understand in 2011 what the comprehensive plan was. And so they went ahead and changed the land development code, which didn't match the comprehensive plan at all. So we're looking for good examples. And I have a solution here that I'm about to give you a little bit later that we'll certainly work on.
Is this an annual cost to put it on the Muni Code? This is an annual cost that we have?
There is an annual cost, but it's not, we don't pay it every year. We pay an annual cost to have it on web. But we usually send in the ordinance every couple of years, and they update it.
Do you know what that annual cost is, ballpark figure?
It's usually around $3,000 to $4,000.
Okay. So this isn't, this
Some
isn't,
years we pass 30 ordinances, and some years we pass
Okay. So this is just an update cost, but it is inclusive of the cost for the maintenance for the year? Is that, there's not an additional cost for the,
We have to pay for the maintenance for the online, the web.
okay.
In order for them to have our code on Unicode, we have to have an $800. I think it's around $800. That's
Okay.
a separate cost.
Okay, so this is an addition for the update, okay.
This is what Attorney Johnson was relating, just so you have this from an attorney's perspective. When you have a developer that comes into town and he's looking at what's in this book, this book has your comprehensive plan and it's out of date. And he unknowingly relies on that and sends in something that's wrong, then it could get far down the line without the realization that it's wrong. And so if your printed material is out of date, it could lead to problems. And through no fault of anybody's, it could create more than $3,000 worth of conflict is my assessment of it. Now, another scenario is somebody tries to take advantage of it and tries to rely on what's in the LDRs against the comp plan, and we've had an experience with that. And the developer has tried to push that, and we said no. The comprehensive plan's like your city charter. That's where you start. And so we said no. You got to adhere to your comprehensive plan and not your land development. Even though, as the manager said, these two things are in conflict. So until we change it, and the process to change your comprehensive plan is not an easy process. It's going to take a while to get it done. It may be 6 months, it may be a year before we get the comp plan amended. I agree in total with what your manager said. It needs to be looked at, and there's some reasons why the comp plan needs to match the LDRs, and they don't match up this yet. So this is just one of those things that creates problems, and my recommendation is to not have problems, spend the $3,000 and not have this sort of problem. That would be my recommendation from legal.
Well, let me clarify. The estimated cost of updating the ordinance is $4,200. Estimated cost to include the comprehensive, the 88. We're not talking $3,000. We're taking $8,800 more.
Yeah, we're talking, well, no, we're talking, actually, 3,836 over the 5,000 we have budgeted.
So the 88 is inclusive of the ordinances.
Yes, that's the ordinance.
Okay, so they aren't two, what I'm saying is the way it's written here, it's like they're two separate costs. The 88 includes both of them.
Right.
Okay.
And if I could have done math, Mom would have sent me to med school.
I just want to get out of high school.
Well, that was a challenge too.
Did you say you had some issues with that, upgrading their comprehensive?
Well, the old one, actually, the old one is better than the new one. You know, in no fault, they were really trying to look at it in 2011, and they looked at the zoning. Unfortunately, they didn't look at the comprehensive plan, and the two don't match. We have a lot of special districts that was created in that comprehensive plan that is not, that doesn't roll over to the land development code. So, you know, regardless, if anybody wants to look at it, they can look at it. But we're in the process of looking at other comprehensive plans and finding a good one. I don't want to totally throw ours away because it really takes a long time to develop that. But if we can find a good one and marry the two together, and then go to the, then we have to have public hearings, and go to the land development, and then we go to the planning and zoning board, and then it comes to you. But it is a process.
Where's the money going to come from out of the budget? Where are you going to pull $3,836 out of? That's what I want to know.
We always have contingency money, so it'll come from contingency. Or as we do work at the end of the year, somebody always turns off the money, so everybody's generating it. Right now, contingency.
Does this come out of planning and zoning's budget, or is that where this comes from, or city? City clerk? Comes out of your budget, okay.
That's for the court.
Well, I'm confused because if we approve it, but you are not in favor of it, I don't understand.
Anybody can come in. I guess it really doesn't matter whether it's on Unicode or not. I mean, we don't keep it from anybody. We allow developers to look at it, and then we help them interpret it. Now, well, we have to do that. So what we're saying is, or what the attorney is saying is, if they go on Unicode and they do a lot of work, and then they find out we don't allow them to do that, somebody is out some money. And so I'm saying it's better to have them come here and we interpret it for them, rather than they spend a lot of money because they saw it on Unicode. I mean, and I procrastinated over the years because it's a big project and I've gone for grants and everything, but it is now coming to the forefront because of development, and so I don't have a choice.
Mr. Walker. Yes, sir. What is the difference between what is up there now and what we're going to put up? And what would be the difference? We have something up there. I don't know the difference between the two, if it's substantial, as opposed to if you say in a year you attempt to update it. I'm just trying to understand what we gain by doing something now if our goal is to do it in a year. I'm just trying to understand the timing of this and the product.
Can we take down the one that's not correct and just not have it there?
You might be able to do that with Unicode. I've never asked that question. I don't know the answer to that. I assume they could say, work in progress, go to the city for it. I've never asked that, but it's certainly something we could look at. Some cities do not use Unicode at all, mostly very small cities. If you're this size city and above, you're on Unicode. And so land developers, project engineers, people that are developing property, the first place they go is to the Unicode and start studying the situation to say, okay, what fits? What do we need to do in order to move this development ahead? That's what your manager is saying. So they start spending money on something and they think they've got something that fits, and all of a sudden they realize it does not. And that's where the danger of this is. We're now, I think the point he made was a good one. We had really virtually no development for a long period of time, and so it wasn't really an issue. Now we're starting to heat up with development, and so it's an issue. But the point, certainly staff could contact Unicode and say, hey, our Unicode comp plan is out of date. We want you to not update it because we're going to revamp our comp plan, and we want you to put a notice on it that says that you got to contact the city for an updated version of the comp plan. Now, whether they would do that or not, I just don't know the answer to that. Certainly something we can investigate.
Because instead of spending $4,000 now, when in 6 months or a year we might have this revised one that would be more accurate, that makes more sense. And any developer who is going to look at a large-scale development and not make a phone call or walk over to the city and do some initial research or whatever, before they start throwing money at it, that seems questionable. I know even with the very small project that I did as a commercial building, I had a site plan drawn up and I paid money to an engineer to do it, and I got over here to City Hall and the city manager didn't like it, and I had to go back and I had to pay more money. And ultimately, I ended up putting that parking lot in, but, it cost me a lot of money. So I understand what you're saying, but I think that for us to spend $4,000 just to cover our butts, which is what we're looking at, when we could potentially maybe just take it down or somehow put a notation that this is not currently up to date. Please contact. We have a wonderful building department now. He's more than willing to work with people and is doing a fabulous job for us in that area. Makes more sense.
Yeah, real world today, individual wanted to put a used car lot in the downtown area. Really, it was behind the building, but anyway, and he said, well, he thought the LDC allowed him to do that. And I said the comprehensive plan absolutely disallowed that. Because there are things we don't want.
Right.
And the used car lot in the back of somebody's building was not something we wanted.
Any suggestions?
Mr. Mayor, do you want staff to look at this and come back to you at the next meeting on this? Certainly between Jimmy's office and my office, we can do that. That's what you'd like.
I would like to know if you could put something on there like what you said on the deal that is temporarily whatever. Any of them, please contact this number for any information and direct them to where they're having to call somebody. And then I would say I know you're going to speak to this issue, then let's get this thing in gear. But I would prefer that to where there is no if you took it off and you put up something in its place that said any information regarding comprehensive, please call the following number and speak. At least that way you're not giving conflicting information. They would call and it would require a phone call and a meeting,
right?
And you could dialogue with them. So I'd like to see if that's possible before we do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's.
Mr. Walker, you gonna do that?
You bet.
Outstanding. Well, I knew that, but I figured I'd ask him. I figured. City Attorney report? Well, we gave you enough. Mr. Booth?
Yeah, of course, I'm always the stand. All right, we hired a CRA director, Christina, and you have her resume in front of you. What I've had to do is, I know you directed 30 hours towards the CRA and 10 hours towards the helping me out, but in reality, we've gone to a 60-40 split. And the 40 is because of her background will be in planning. And I can tell you today, I can't mention much, but because you'll get it through the Planning and Zoning Board, there is a lot of development starting to come in. And so we want to control it. The worst thing a city can have is uncontrolled growth. And so we really want to control that. And at the same time, look at your comprehensive plan to make sure that it meets the LDC. Because truly, a civilian group met in 2011, decided this is the way they wanted the zoning to be. But they didn't touch the comprehensive plan, not knowing that the comprehensive plan was the Bible. And so we need to take what they did in 2011 and put it in the verbiage we need to for the comprehensive plan. And we'll find a good city that has all that in there. Not saying that the professor that did that plan didn't know what he was doing, but I have doubts. Anyway, so as you can see in her resume, and also a committee of 3 went, and she was the number 1. We have 23 applicants, and most of them are good applicants. Some of them are great applicants. We had a gentleman from Gainesville City, but the truth is he made much more money than we could ever offer. And he made more than I did. And so he decided to stay there because he wasn't going to make it anywhere close to what he was making. But in talking to this lady, we really, she is geared up, knows CRA, knows planning. I think she can do both very easily. Keeps us within that range the county wants for administrative costs. We're actually, there were 4 areas, and we have covered all 4 of those. So when we go back to them, we can say that we've covered. One of them is giving grants to homes. We stopped that. I don't know why we're doing it, but we stopped it, and so that we're not doing anymore. Because I talked at the Chamber of Commerce, it seems like I got a lot of visitors today with the CRA and looking for things. It tells me we need to be a little more visible with the CRA and the city and the people down there. We are also in lead with the Pioneer Days that go on. We're not trying to take it over, but we're trying to assist the chamber in doing their things. We also have some advertisement dollars that can go into that event. The Music in the Park was asking for a few dollars, so there's a lot of people asking for advertisement. Might look next year, and well, Christina might look next year in increasing that budget for advertisement.
So she's going to spend 40% of her time working on city stuff and 60 on CRA, or vice versa?
More than likely, she'll do her 40% working with Bill.
Okay.
And the developments coming in.
Okay.
I will again be the project manager for all the grants that are out there. So we'll all be very, very busy.
And will we adjust that in the financial piece so that we don't get into any problems with the CRA and make sure that we...
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Right.
We'll be better off than...
Right, because we'll be at a lower administrative cost. Okay.
Right. All the projects are going well. The Civic Center, which we had a long discussion, is looking good. They tore out everything. We're starting to put things back together, so it will be a really attractive building when we get finished. I don't know about the colors outside, but they're going to paint, but I don't do the things in life. I don't do colors. We're starting work with the budget already. Even though we haven't spent most of the budget this year, we're working on next year's. There's a lot of wants and needs, and we're it's sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. We kind of try to fit it in and meet everybody's needs. I'm going to set up a CRA meeting for the next council meeting at 6 o'clock. There's a number of things we need to talk about. Some of it's sidewalk, and there's other projects, other requests coming through that the CRA board needs to see. Then the police at the current time are looking at all the schools within our district. And I didn't realize how large the First Baptist school is, and they are very vulnerable.
Within the city, not the district.
Within the city, that's right. They're very vulnerable, and they're working with the principal at that particular school. So we have that thing, at least the chief has it in hand. The safety of our kids are very important. The community school is always locked down, and so we're doing patrols around it. We have a resource officer there all the time. She doesn't get pulled off like in many cities. And so I think safety-wise, we're probably better set than anybody else in this county.
I have a question on the school, and Mr. Jameson might be able to answer. The community school, the backside of that's not fenced?
They're actually doing a site assessment, and they're going out, and each school is assessing the fencing, gate structures. We are hoping that there will be on the referendum that there's going to be a sales tax deal that the school board is putting up specifically for facilities, and within that is safety. So that is the one thing we're doing now, is trying to ascertain those things which can be readily, but some schools, the sad part of it is, I guess you would say, is a lot of these schools were built 40 years ago. This was not something that they were open schools. And so now we're having to adjust. So they are doing the inspections and then prioritizing.
Okay. I just, I'm sad that we have to turn our schools into prisons. But even today, I went to Mentor at Santa Fe, and there was a security guard there, and he asked my name and what I was doing there and took my plate number. And while I'm sad that our society has come to that point, I'm glad that step is being taken, because it's an important piece for our children and our teachers and our support staff to know that somebody's paying attention, so.
Lori?
I'm sorry, I have some other things. Talking about the First Baptist School, I had somebody call me about the road there and about the traffic there. And the road is in very poor repair there. At whatever the road is called that runs alongside the school where it intersects the old 9th Street, it's been patched and patched and patched and patched. And then it's in pretty poor condition going from that point right up to 441. Additionally, if you go down that road, and I apologize, I don't know the name of it, but where the let out is there, or maybe it's the go in, it's falling apart there and been patched several times. And a couple of the residents have complained about the traffic, and there's also construction traffic, because that development behind there, everybody comes in through that area because it's really not easy to access those two developments off the 441 exit. So that being said, do we have any plan for managing that situation a little better?
We do. That there'll be money put in the budget next year to do a number of projects, and that's really on top. We were going to do it when we did the parking lot over at the Civic Center, but the contractor didn't want to do that. So in the budget year, we'll budget out about $100,000 and go out for bids for all these small projects that need to be fixed. On the other side, when they put in the school, it was agreed by them that when they put in a high school, they were to put in another road.
Okay. And so, they got the high school.
Right, and they have the high school, and they didn't do the road. And so we have an issue with that.
Because that's the thing that these residents are complaining about, is that traffic should be coming off 441 onto the school property.
And we agree that there should be a road that goes in there, because right now they come through that neighborhood and they go over to the school and let their kids out and then go back out. And it's causing, because there's 500 kids over there now, it is really causing a traffic thing. That has nothing to do with the road itself, because we're responsible and we need to fix that.
Right.
I mean, it goes to show you, except for in Mr. Jameson's subdivision, there's only so many patches you can put on patches. I mean, I have that. I took a survey, and so
he has nice roads.
Yeah, so
it's like a checkerboard.
It is, and so it's amazing. It's only one small area. It's not across the street. It's just right there in the front. So I don't know what they're doing.
I know.
Yeah, what are you doing? That's what he's saying.
Yeah, what are you all doing?
We raced through that.
I think so. And so those are the small areas that we'll do for $100,000. And that road is certainly hard.
Do we have a way to force the school to do what they promised to do?
We'll go to the planning and zoning board and get the records and go that. It's been a number of years.
I know it has, but if that was the agreement with the conditional use permit, then we should be able to go back and ask them to step up for what they did.
That's right. And I think they're just in the process of putting a high school there.
No, the high school's been there.
Is it?
Yeah, the high
Okay.
school's
Well,
been there.
Then that's my, and I need to take a look at it.
Okay, and then the other question about roads, since we're on roads, speed limits on 27 and 441 and timing at that pedestrian crossing at 27 and Main Street. It's like you hit that button, you walk for 3 steps, and you better start running, okay? And if you are not a fast walker, you're not going to get across that road.
I guess it's meant that when the light comes on, you need to be in the road before it turns red. And so really you need to be at a starting thing. Now that is truly up to DOT with the speed limits, and we've brought that up. I mean, they're doing 80 miles an hour on 441. I know, because every morning I try to get out there, you kind of judge just how they're coming, and then you zip on over.
How do we approach them to get that dropped down?
We have, and they're looking at it. They swear they're doing studies, and that's the DOT.
They tell me the same thing about a left arrow right there at that light.
I would comment on that as far as time frame. We've been working on something within the school thing now for about 6 months on the same type of deal, and guaranteed. So, I mean, I don't mean to put a damper, but we've been assured it's going to be done, and yet we're still waiting. So it's not the answer, but it's just maybe an explanation. Gloria?
That's it. Did we get the hole in the backyard done?
Not yet. It's still going to be done next week. They took because the lift station, all the parts weren't there, sort of like a tinker toy or something. But, and so they had to go back to the drawing board. When they come back there, they will crush that septic tank. They're still doing a few of the grinder pumps. And they'll definitely do that. That's on their list.
Okay. How about the cleanup of the 2 burnt houses over there by Mrs. Wright?
I'll have to admit I haven't been over there, but we have called the individuals that own that house and told them they need to get that dumpster out of there and they need to clean up. Now, it is truly the owner's responsibility. We're not even allowed to go on their property, so we just need to continue pushing.
Okay. That's what I need to know.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to mention that there's going to be another home on Sunday. The builders, what is it?
Habitat.
There we go.
Yeah, Habitat.
On Sunday, if we,
2 o'clock.
yes, it is 2 o'clock. I attended the last one that we had, and it was really inspiring to watch the procedure and how they were going to make these styles and everything. So get an opportunity to go out. It was.
Where is it? Which house? The one over on the old 4th Street?
243rd.
Yeah.
Don't tell me these new street names, because I have no idea where they are.
If you go down the street by the post office, just go straight.
Or 4th Street. Okay, that one. It's right around the corner from my house. 2 o'clock Sunday?
Haven't gotten in trouble over that one because I mentioned the lady had built that. So it's a
women build. It was a women build. It was a woman build. Yeah.
But it is very exciting to watch. Also, speaking of the police department, I went to pick up my granddaughter at school last week. I get them on early day. No, it was just this past Wednesday. And I didn't realize there was a police car right behind me. We were waiting there at the light on 441 and Main Street, I guess that is. And as I started to pull out to turn, I was going straight, I noticed this police car behind me with his lights going. And I thought, my gosh, what did I do? It's just sitting there. and he pulled out in the walkway, pedestrian, and stopped his car. There was a young boy, about 8 years old, I guess, trying to get across. He was punching the button trying to get across. He stopped traffic and walked him across. And I was so impressed by that. I thought, that is really neat. He just took a few minutes out of his time and made sure that boy got across the street. And I don't know who it was, but I was very impressed by that. Then everybody stopped. Nobody moved till that boy got across. So kudos to whomever that was.
Well, you got to mention the Habitat House. I want you to know yours truly did 2 nails in that house.
All right.
Well, yes, I know.
Yeah, make sure that officer gets a cookie citation.
You on
Whoever
camera.
it was that did that, I was very impressed.
You should have gotten his name and badge number.
I should have, yes. But I was impressed. That was very nice of him. That's all I have.
It was mentioned, I just want to briefly on the deal as far as the safety. I want the people to understand that we're extremely blessed at this school. Our prior SRO, Larry Downing, was at the forefront of this training that all the schools have gotten on how to react to active shooters and intruders, and he's passed that along to the new SRO. Mr. Downing and the school were leaps ahead of every other as far as implementing this procedure to make the kids safer. So nothing is foolproof, but they've done an exceptional job as far as within the training specifically for active shooters on campus. And so I just want the people to know that we're very fortunate with Chief and having Larry Downing. And what's the lady's name, Chief? I apologize. But they've done a really good job, and they've been very proactive as far as training the staff and kids on situations and scenarios and preparing them for when it happens. And so we're blessed to have that within here is to have that training. So I wanted to thank them on that one, make sure it was acknowledged. I don't have anything. I have a motion to adjourn. So move. We're out of here.
All right.
Nancy, I will forward that to you.
Huh?
I'll forward it to you. I've got a note here.
Okay.